There's a saying that people fear what they don't understand. What did you fear before you understood it? Thunderstorms. I was terrified of thunderstorms and tornadoes when I was a kid. That I would fear puke if I saw dark clouds. One day in second grade, it stormed during class and I ran to the front of the room to throw up in the trash can. My teacher sent a couple of books home with me about how thunderstorms and tornadoes work. After reading the books, I became fascinated and excited by storms instead of helplessly terrified. Iron lungs. I had no idea what they were as a child. All I knew is that people went inside of them. Turns out, they're a pretty fucking neat solution to a serious problem. I read a really interesting article on the BBC back at the start of the year. Just try to find it, but I can't. It was about a few people who still use one, their stories and challenges. I believe some could still live a fairly normal life during the day, but one of them was in more permanently. The biggest concern was one part that they may need to replace soon. Being the new guy in any situation, such as a job, club, friend of a friend, etc., can be nerve-wracking trying to get to know people and figure out the mood so you know what to avoid to piss people off, until you get more comfortable within the situation. A previous housemate of mine was like this, to the point where she just wouldn't go to events where she wouldn't know more than one person at it. The kicker is that she's always invited me to things with people I didn't know. I usually did take her up on her offer, being the extrovert that I am, but if it was a place I didn't want to go to, she was obsessed with this one awful bar, or I wasn't in the mood to go out, she'd get into such a strop with me. The best was when there was an event I was going to. She said she wasn't sure if she was going to go. I made plans with my BF and his friends more than a month in advance. At the last minute, she wanted to come, so I told her to join me, my BF, and his friends. She refused and seriously tried to get me to change my plans, to the point where it became a heated discussion between us. She tried to play the "you're putting a boyfriend before friends" card. Weirdly enough, meditation. When I first heard about it a few years ago, I thought it was a cult-like activity. I felt very uncomfortable when people would suggest it as something I should try, when of course, it is not only completely harmless and practiced daily by all sorts of people, but also really helpful. I always told my students, 5 to 10 years old, that meditation is an exercise for the brain, just like jumping jacks are an exercise for the body. It strengthens our thought process and allows us to regulate our emotions in more constructive ways. Being able to separate thoughts from feelings and feelings from facts. The goal of mindfulness is so important. I think if skeptics gave some guided meditation a try, they'd be quite surprised. Headspace has a really great beginner's course. The app is pricey, but worth it, I feel. They also have a YouTube account with some of the content, and they just did a documentary with Netflix. Hell, I saw a link once where someone pirated it all and put all of the stuff in a Google Drive. Lol. Psst. Teachers get it free. Microwaves. Growing up, there was about 7 years where we didn't have a microwave. Since I didn't use them, I started to really think that something that could heat up food so damn fast had to use some unhealthy means to do so. Now, after 10 years in the STEM field, I can confidently say that I don't fear microwaves anymore. Outer space. Boyfriend and I are watching too many movies because we're inside. I love horror and he doesn't, and I spent a few weeks trying to convince him that movies like Contact and Apollo 13 are absolutely terrifying. They're not. I was too young to follow them once, and could only pick up on the tension in each scene. Of course, I'm nowhere near understanding space. I work in marketing, but my awareness of the genius of most people who work in space discovery has only increased with time. We are in much better hands than I once suspected to be. Blindness. I was prepared for it in a sense, since I can remember. I knew I'd go blind, but nothing really prepared me for the moment I fully lost my sight. It was horrible, but after I came to terms with it, I have come to understand that it is a unique and beautiful part of myself that I would never change or trade away. As someone in the mental health field, suicide. Can't say I fully understand it, but I am vastly more capable than I used to be of coming alongside someone who is hurting so bad that they would want to take their own life. It scares me, but it's also an honor when my clients are willing to let me journey through the dark with them. Rejection. I think people are so terrified of it because they view it as there must be something wrong with them, or project their own insecurities about themselves in order to validate the rejection. Truth is, there probably isn't an important reason they said no, and it most likely isn't because of any issue with you. They didn't hire you because someone else left a better impression. They didn't go on a date with you because they didn't see you as compatible. None of it matters. What's more important is shooting your shot. You'll go on to regret everything you didn't do, but not everything you did do. Someone saying no to you is not a reflection of yourself, but saying no to yourself most certainly is. Nuclear power. I hated the idea of all that nuclear waste. Then I started doing some research. Turns out, we figured out how to turn spent nuclear fuel into usable fuel and reduce the post-use hazardous radioactive time from 200,000 years to about 250 years. We figured out in the 70s. It cost too much. Facepalm. How hot dogs were made. People told me to never find out how hot dogs were made as if it were some satanic ritual where they spilled the blood of a dog onto a normal wiener, or that they were just made out of ground up hooves and eyes from leftover animals. I soon found out they were made out of just normal old meat. Quicksand. I thought it was a huge problem back when I was youngling. Illustrated animations portrays it as a very dangerous thing, but it really isn't. Other than that, I think depression. I've observed humans that were afraid of depression. They were afraid to appear weak in front of the fellow kind, but there is nothing afraid when asking for help. Black people. Growing up in a white suburb in the 70s and 80s, being told to lock the doors when passing through a black area, the news mainly showed violent black people and reporting on murders in the city. All of that has an effect on me. Film clips of riot of the late 60s and early 70s, and seeing these rundown neighborhoods a decade or two later. Only had a few black kids in high school in my town, but I grew up with some Hispanic friends, so knew not everyone was, quote, bad. Let's say I was taught to be cautious, more than hatred. Anyway, I went to a college in a city that had been decimated by riots in the 60s. Worked on campus with guys that grew up in the projects. One guy hated me just because I was white. The other guys were fun guys. One eye-opening time was walking downtown. I realized I was the only white person on my side of the street, and the sidewalk was packed. I almost waved at a lone white guy on the other side of the street. It was weird to be a minority, but nobody bothered me, or even said boo to me. Worked with a few different black guys and gals over the years, and never had issues with most of them. We all worked hard, and one dude gave me the key quote: "We all want the same thing, no matter our background." Everyone wants their kids to live a better life than they did. There is nothing to fear, as the average person just wants a better life, no matter where they are from. We can all live better lives. I really blame the media for blowing up our differences. We all just want to live our lives, and the majority of people are friendly and kind, but you'd never know it from the nightly news. Death. Of course I don't understand it in the way that I've experienced it personally, but I was a caregiver too and watched my wife die from metastatic breast cancer last year. Before she passed, my self-preservation instinct was pretty atrophied. Now I just don't give a shit. I'm not suicidal. Sushi. My backwater, prairie self thought it sounded disgusting when it was only described to me as raw fish, but then I tried it and my eyes were opened. Spiders. In high school, I was on a trip and saw the tiniest, smallest spider in the grass spinning some threads between the cut blades and thought, this nearly invisible spider is putting absolutely all of its energy, so much so that it will not be able to replicate this soon-to-be web anytime soon, into making a home and a food source for itself in some neatly maintained grass patch at some rest stop in the middle of nowhere off the side of a highway. that's probably going to be mowed again at some point, ruining the web. Why on earth should I be afraid of it? And then I proceed to watch it and be sad, thinking of how all spiders' hard work would be ruined the next time they cut the grass. Now every time I see a spider, I just think of how hard they work and how much energy they expend to make their webs, and I don't feel so afraid anymore. Still pretty wary if they get too close to my bed or in the shower though. Gay people. Growing up in the early 90s in deep South Georgia, peers kept telling me about how the gays were going to destroy everything and make us all gay. I was around 11 or 12, so my friends knew what they were talking about. I said something to my mom about it, and she took me with her, where she catered as a side job. I got to run the cheese bar for 3 hours and got paid well. After the night was over, Mom and I were driving back home, and she informed me that I was just at a gay event, for the two hosts had come out and confirmed they were a couple. That was when I realized other 12-year-olds probably aren't the best at commentating on society. TLDR, kid scared of gay people, due to friends. Mom takes kid to gay event to learn the truth about tolerance of different people. Miss you, Mom. The homosexuality inside of me. I acknowledge that I was thinking about women back about 2 years ago, but kind of pretended I had it wrong or something, or that this was all some sort of phase. Whenever the thought of the LGBT community popped in my head, I'd get a weird feeling in my stomach and think of something else. About a year ago, I did come out to 2 people, and I immediately regretted it. I felt like I was lying to them, and felt that I was mistaken, and this was all just a phase of confusion. A couple weeks ago, my sister came out as bi. It was a strange and crazy roller coaster of thoughts for me. Here I was, now hearing someone's story about their involvement in the LGBT community. It was real, and it was now a part of my life. Something about that made me uncomfortable. I didn't get much sleep that night. I felt more sick to my stomach than ever, and I didn't completely know why. I decided this was probably just a regular reaction to a close family member coming out, and that I just had to let it sink in, and I would magically be fine and continue living my totally and completely straight life, in which I, the main character, was definitely and absolutely not gay, right? Days passed, and I realized I'm not wrong. I'm not mistaken. I'm not confused. I'm bisexual. I felt a lot better since that day. I'm so glad that I just took a minute and reflected. Now I'm not afraid. I'm not wrong, and I'm not lying. My sexuality is a part of me, and it's who I am. Sometimes I think about coming out. If my sister could do it, why can't I? While I'm not sure that I'm ready to do it now, I know that someday I will do it, and that day will be glorious. I feared that I wasn't actually saved, and God would send me to hell for being gay. I knew it didn't really make sense, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to investigate because everyone is so sure that's the case, and I was scared that I'd find out they were right. A TikTok video popped up explaining that Levititious was actually talking about pedophiles, not homosexuals. I looked into it a little more, and well, everyone is fucking wrong, and that set me free from a lot of stuff that seemed to be right, just because the Christian community thinks it is. People swearing. I was raised in an extremely conservative home and have probably never sworn in my life. It used to freak me out anytime somebody would swear, IRL or in video games. Now I have more of an understanding. I have a very different mindset about it. It's almost an appreciation for people swearing, when it's tasteful. I don't know if it makes sense, but there it is. All the feelings I feel are irrational. I'm terrified of bulls, male bovines. I live on a farm and we no longer have a bull. When we did, I couldn't even walk through the field he was in. I've never been chased by any bull, never even had a bad experience. I'm just petrified of them. Murky water is another, and while I did have an incident when I was 2, nearly drowning in a swimming pool, and I doubt I'll ever be a strong swimmer, but I have no issues with water in swimming pools or otherwise. Unless I cannot see the bottom, then I'm scared. I'm scared of having my airway choked off. This one isn't irrational, but I understand where it comes from. I have hardened esophagus from GERD, and periodically I get food stuck in there. Horrible things have happened, especially when I then have liquids trying to get down the wrong pipe. People fear what they don't know, not don't understand, in my opinion. Democrats. I was raised in a raising conservative household, and Obama literally wanted communism, and Fox was the only unbiased network, and evolution was nothing more than a flawed theory. My mom asked me, what happened to me after I voted for Joe Biden? I told her, I grew up. For the record, I love my parents, and weirdly, we get along great, except for that part. Electroconvulsive therapy. Electric shocks given to people with psychiatric problems. Basically, thought it would be like in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Nowadays, I work in the psychiatric field and have seen with my own eyes that it's amazingly effective and that patients are happy with the treatment. Gay folks. Father always bashed gay men since I was a wee toddler. Ugh, I still remember this collage of moments over the years of him making belittling jokes and shit-talking on homosexuals. I carried that till I was about 18-ish. Learned a lot plummeting into the nethers of society. I traveled alone a lot without my father across the country and have met a lot of wonderful people, outcasts, and pariahs. Folks put out just for how they are wired. It also took me a while to not see them as predatory, as my father had insisted they were. Surprise pops, you can go fuck yourself. Gay folks are awesome, and I'm a proud LGBTQ supporter now. Multiple personality disorder, which is now dissociative identity disorder. After watching Anthony Padilla's video about DID, and then binge watching a lot of Socrates' videos, I understand it way more, and not just how the media portrays it, with Split and other things. Wasps, bees, and other stinging insects. You see, as a kid, I had and still have a huge love for insects, but a bad experience with a honeybee stung my hand after I accidentally grabbed it, and a yellow jacket had it sting me twice on the leg, and a paper wasp stung and bit me on my neck when I was young, left me paranoid around them. I thought they were out to get me and being assholes just to be assholes, but then around the age of 13, I got a book on insects, particularly the stinging kind, and their behaviors. I learned a lot. I came to recognize warning signs. For example, yellow jackets and other ground-dwelling wasps won't just outright sting you. They will try to warn you away by bumping into you repeatedly before stinging in a last-ditch effort to dissuade you. I learned that the wasps you see flying around and bees flying around foraging are the oldest in their hives and considered expendable, while the younger wasp and bees care for the hive itself. I learned that wasps near the end of their lifespan, particularly before winter hits, are only more aggressive because they have nothing to do, no more young to take care of, and they are slowly approaching the end of their natural lives. And this causes them to act out, like going to soda cans and interacting with more people. But something amazing happened long before I got the book. At the age of 8, I was in elementary school, primary for non-US people, and was resting on a bench, hanging over the side, when 2 yellow jackets landed on me to check me out, one of each arm. They never stung me, they were simply checking me out, and crawling over, sniffing, etc. Then flew off. This put the idea in my head, they weren't all bad, and I think opened me to seeing them better later in life. Life was very anxious and worried all the time. It stopped me doing a lot of things, until I finally found some clarity and understanding in what I wanted and how to go about it, and the worry fell away. Life-changing. Transgender identity. I was one of those, there's male, female, and everything else in mental illness, a-holes, till I met a trans girl on a Zelda Facebook group, and she took the time to run me through the whole deal with it. I can't say I understand all of it, but it seems like the only people who truly can are trans people, but I'm definitely not the close-minded idiot I once was about it, that's for sure. Honestly, homosexuality. Grew up in a religious household where I led to believe that they're the spawn of Satan. Then I learned that my best friend was gay. I had 2 choices, get rid of my friend or accept that my parents are fucking retards. I chose the latter. Homosexuality. As a lot of kids who grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, was generally a little turd and homophobe, no violence or anything like that, just used gay as a slur and thought it was gross. Didn't really know any gay people, or ones who were out at least. Then grew up. A good friend of mine came out. Remained friends, still hanged out together. Even attended parties, where I was one of the few straight guys there. They were really good people, nothing to fear or dislike. When Australia voted on same-sex marriage, I had no dramas voting yes. I'm deeply ashamed of my younger self for being a dick, but I like to think growth and change is possible. I definitely think besides what you read on the internet, we are progressing on those fronts. Loud music. I have a pretty sensitive sense of hearing. Loud noises startle me easily, so I was very careful with the volume of music I listened to. But when I went to a live concert, I noticed a strange reaction in myself. I enjoyed the loudness. I enjoyed when I could hear every note clearly and felt the bass in my stomach. It was one of the best experiences of my life. Now I'm a serious fan of live music and even make music. Of course I use earplugs, but I still enjoy the feeling of loud music. I've learned that it's not the loudness, but the source of noise, which bothers me. This is going to be a controversial comment. Furries. Most sexual fetishes. Actually, including people who are into lolly. There is a difference between being attracted to drawn characters and being attracted to actual humans. It took me a while to understand that furries aren't trying to fuck your dog, and that people into lolly aren't trying to fuck your little sister. My emails always terrified me of what I'll get. Why FAFSA is emailing me? Did I do all my projects wrong? Why is there an email from my professor? Fuck, my bank sent me an email about God knows what? All I had to do is actually read them, and see what it's about. But damn did the unknown scare me enough to avoid them as long as possible. Needles. I used to be very curious about docs and health as a kid, and loved to go to them and hospitals. But after a messy vaccine where I felt like I was stabbed with needles into a bone in my shoulder, where nothing happened and I didn't feel pain, the feeling of it hitting bone never left me. It turns out it didn't hit bone. I was just too tense. You don't get those that deeply. I've always had very tense muscles, and I think the young nurse seeing me naked due to the other exam had me very nervous as a teen. Since, I became a regular blood donor, but not before I skipped my vaccines for over a decade. My parents forced me to get my blood sampled like 5 times within that time, and it was horrifying. Luckily, someone explained to me how vaccines actually work, and they don't usually go that deep. If it was needed to go deep, they'd choose my thigh or ass. And that was actually the last needle before conquering my fear. Penicillin shot into my upper ass cheek. Made me fucking fly my way home. Anyway, not long after that, I started donating blood, and it's entirely different. It's a teensy bit painful due to the thicker needle, less like a mosquito, and more like the thinnest needle your granny uses to sew with. And also, it doesn't go into a strong area like thigh/butt/shoulder, but directly into a thick vein in your arm, which has to be penetrated as well, which is not easy due to the thickness of its walls. So all that did not help with my fear, due to my weird concept of strong and soft areas. But the people who take your blood obviously look much more closely at what they're doing and stuff, so it actually feels more safe when you look at them doing the deep. Obviously, it's still the worst thing ever having to witness the needle penetrating my soft side of my elbow into a big bloody vein. But hey, I had like 5 shots since, and donated blood 7 times, so I guess I'm pretty much done with this irrational fear. That said, I'm not looking forward to a time where I have low iron, and need to check it again. Traumatized for life. Thanks, Mom.